Obi-Wan Kenobi. More like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hello there. I actually wasn't aware that hello there was some kind of Star Wars meme until like a week ago. That's how out of the loop I am when it comes to Star Wars.
Hello there.
I've seen all of the films, but I've never watched The Clone Wars, just so you understand the perspective I'm coming from. After my disappointment with the Boba Fett show, I wasn't really that interested in Obi-Wan. I wasn't sure I would even bother. Both of the shows were originally planned as movies around the time the sequel trilogy was being released. Sometime after the underwhelming box office results for the Han Solo prequel, Disney changed course and both of these projects became shows to build up the Disney Plus streaming service. In the Book of Boba Fett, there was barely enough story for an entire show. It was only 6 episodes, and 2 of those were dedicated to The Mandalorian. It's as if Disney knew there wasn't enough story and padded it out with Din Djarin, because now audiences will have to watch Boba Fett's show in order to be caught up for The Mandalorian Season 3. I see you, Disney. My first interaction with the Obi-Wan show was a tweet from Red Letter Media's Jay Ballman where he mocked the overly shaky camera effect of the opening shot and was swiftly attacked by Star Wars stans. My second interaction was when a friend sent me a video where the Leia chase scene was set to Benny Hill music. It's actually funnier in the show because the musical score is so over the top. My third interaction was seeing the meme with the kid stacked under a trench coat passing as an adult that poked fun at episode 4. Meanwhile, other friends of mine were telling me how great this show was. After completing the show, I personally think this should have been left a 2-hour film. It starts off with Obi-Wan in hiding and does show how Jedis are being hunted. The villains are immediately cartoonish and not really that intimidating. There are a lot of characters, but not enough time to get attached to any of them. Kumail Nanjiani does provide some nice comic relief as a seedy con man posing as a Jedi. There's a character who is an Imperial officer that is considering going into the rebellion, named Tala, and the actor does a good job in the role, but the character sacrifices herself within a few episodes. O'Shea Jackson Jr. plays a rebel leader, and his performance isn't very different from the military guy he played in Godzilla King of the Monsters. He always just seems to play a one-note background character. Zach Braff voices Freck, the friendly but pro-fascist truck driver. Then we've got the return of Jimmy Smits, and the return of Ian McDiarmid, and the return of Liam Neeson. As the character he played in The Phantom Menace, I can't even remember the character's name. Let's get to some of my issues with the show. First of all, I'm not a big fan of the writing. It's fill-in-the-blank writing where I already know what the character is going to say in response. People say things like, "You go too far," and the response is, "Maybe you don't go far enough." It makes me think of a joke from Futurama.
I say your 3-cent titanium tax goes too far. And I say your 3-cent titanium tax doesn't go too far enough.
Or an unlikable character says, "You don't have to have manners when you're speaking with lower life forms." And the response is, "Then I shouldn't have to use manners when I'm speaking to you." I'm not gonna punch down on child actors here because that's just rude, but I don't think young Leia needed to be a part of this show at all. When there's a child performance that doesn't work, it's really the fault of the director because child actors are gonna need much better guidance. I do think Deborah Chow's direction for the show was flawed. I don't think the show is bad, but I think a major problem for me is that it's just too wacky, slapstick, and cartoonish. There are blaster fight scenes where characters are firing point blank and not even trying to take cover. There's a scene where a stormtrooper gets slapped across the head and he's wearing a helmet, but it knocks him down anyway. A character is thwarted by a tree branch in the Leia chase scene. I thought a show about Obi-Wan would be a little more serious than this. The scenes between Obi-Wan and Vader are more dark and dramatic, but everything else feels kind of like padding. The inclusion of young Leia and young Luke complicates the canon, and throwaway lines are meant to explain why this all makes sense, even though most of this was not implied in the original trilogy. When Leia sent the message to Obi-Wan Kenobi that said, "You fought with my father in the Clone Wars," and the two didn't sound familiar at all, it was because she was actually pretending not to know him. Maybe this has been a fan theory before, but it's solidified as canon now. I never felt like this was the original intent of the dialogue, but oh well. Also, apparently Leia has been wearing the same outfit since she was 10 years old. Did we really need to set up how she got her look? Then there's the third sister, Reva, chasing Luke with a lightsaber, but he never sees it because his eyes are closed. I thought Luke was a farm boy with a boring life, longing to go and see the galaxy, but no, he had a traumatic incident as a child where a Jedi tried to kill him, and he blocked it out, I guess. Obi-Wan Kenobi is almost like a show you'd see on Sci-Fi Channel back in the day, but with a much bigger budget. I still think it's better than the Boba Fett show. Ewan McGregor really gives it his all. He does a great job with the character. He's understated and clearly has suffered since the events of the prequel films. He's the best part of the show, and rightfully so, he's the eponymous character. It starts out as a look into how Kenobi dealt with the loss of his apprentice and friend, but in the end it falls short of delivering a fully rounded exploration of this concept. There's no tension at all. We know that Kenobi, Luke, Leia, Vader, Uncle Owen, and Aunt Beru are all going to survive. So the scenes where they're supposed to be in danger have absolutely no stakes. Even when the Grand Inquisitor is killed, he just comes right back. Same thing with Reva, the third sister. She's impaled by Vader, but lives. By the way, Moses Ingram does a fine job as Reva. It's ludicrous that people have sent her hate mail, but this kind of thing is almost expected at this point as part of the ongoing culture wars. She played Lady Macduff in the Tragedy of Macbeth, and she's capable of more than the lackluster writing that the Obi-Wan show offers, but if you're just looking at these villains as exaggerated cartoon characters, the performances are appropriate. For example, in one scene, the third sister cuts off a woman's hand, but there's no blood, and the woman briefly screams but doesn't fall to her knees or cry or anything. She just stands there, and the dialogue keeps going.
We're not under the Empire's... All we want is information.
So yeah, there are a lot of small decisions like this that kind of take me out of the show. Reva ends up getting a small anti-hero arc. She's basically another Kylo Ren-style character, a member of the dark side who is conflicted. This story might have been executed better if it were just consolidated into a movie that was more focused on Vader and Kenobi. After Kenobi picks up his lightsaber again, he saves Leia, who is kidnapped by Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. What is it with bass players being in Star Wars shows? Because Thundercat was in Boba Fett. Both shows also have parkour chase scenes too. Is this some kind of new tradition for Star Wars? Also, the tortured father figure setup is already being done in the other Star Wars show, The Mandalorian, which makes this story about Obi-Wan and Leia feel kind of redundant. Darth Vader started out as a villain that was popular for the look of his armor and the sound of his voice. But due to the complexity given to his character in the following films, he's become arguably the most iconic screen villain of all time. The absolute best part of the show is in the final episode when Vader's mask gets destroyed and we see the man beneath. An excellent Jekyll and Hyde moment where his character felt more human, but we needed more focus on moments like this to make this show truly special. Obi-Wan has two encounters with Vader. I laughed out loud at the first one because Vader draws out his big symbolic dick and Obi-Wan comically runs off camera. The second encounter was a lot cooler. They throw rocks at each other. It's all good fun, but I think in a way I've changed. Even when Vader did the cool thing and stopped the ship from taking off, it was just a callback to that shitty Rise of Skywalker movie where Rey and Kylo did the same thing. I have a friend who once told me they didn't like anything Star Wars because they didn't like movies that were make-believe. I tried to explain that all movies are make-believe, unless they're documentaries, which are still incredibly subjective. But I understand what my friend was trying to communicate. To some people, looking at actors in silly costumes and face paint just looks like people LARPing out in the woods, or bad cosplaying. Something has clicked in my brain, and now, when I'm watching this, there are times where I feel like I'm just watching a bunch of actors in stupid costumes, pointing fake weapons at each other and going pew, 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 like children on a playground. I'm a broken, cynical old man. The child is gone. The dream has died. I have to be honest, I don't like the prequel movies. I know in recent years there's been a reevaluation of the prequels. Some people are nostalgic for them because they were young when they came out. I was 13 when The Phantom Menace came out, and I was a huge Star Wars fan. My friends and I would sit around and talk about continuity errors in the original trilogy. I used to rewatch that original trilogy on VHS over and over again. I saw Phantom Menace in the theater when it came out, and I liked it alright, but it was really all about the pod race and the Darth Maul lightsaber fight. The rest of the movie was kind of underwhelming. By the time Attack of the Clones was out, I was 17. I watched it in the theater and thought it was incredibly dumb. I was getting more into David Lynch films at that point, so CG Yoda jumping around with a lightsaber just felt childish and stupid. I didn't even bother seeing The Revenge of the Sith in the theater, but I eventually caught it on television and it's alright. It's the best of the prequel movies, and everything that is good about this show draws from the core story of Anakin's betrayal of Obi-Wan and transformation into Vader. It was implied that Obi-Wan and Anakin hadn't seen each other in a long time when they had their brief encounter in the original, and at the time the movie could have been a one-off sci-fi flop, but it succeeded and is now one of the most influential science fiction films of all time. But that's why there's a problem going back to this time period and trying to create new stories that weave in and out of this original movie that, didn't really have any of this in mind when it was being made. Now it turns out that Obi-Wan and Vader had several lightsaber fights in between. And maybe even more to come, but probably not given the ending of the show. I was told that the show would get better when Darth Vader showed up, but when I saw him I thought, I've seen Darth Vader dancing to Michael Jackson at this point. It's kind of hard to take him seriously anymore. The RLM guys made this same comparison in their review of the show, meaning I can't be too far off base thinking this. I was questioning whether Hayden Christensen was in the suit or not because I saw a photo of two different body doubles in the suit. It made me think that Hayden Christensen was only there for the scenes where he's covered in scars and the scenes where they used the de-aging on him. It looks like they used de-aging on Hayden Christensen, but he still looks way too old given the time period that it's supposed to be set in. They're using some kind of AI for the James Earl Jones voice too? Star Wars is all CG de-aged actors, CG dead actors, AI voices of living actors. It's a fucking mess. Getting back to the over-the-top musical score, isn't this music a little much for the scene where Vader just gets up from his throne and looks out the window? Does the intensity of the music have to be amped up to 11 all the time? I found the music in this show to be serviceable, but forgettable. Unless it's just using the John Williams themes. This is a shame because I generally liked the score that Natalie Holt did for the Loki show. When it comes to rating the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, I didn't go in with high expectations, and I was still a little disappointed. Yet mostly I just feel unimpressed and indifferent. I know some people are gonna like this show, but I'm going with a 5 out of 10. It's one that the fan base is pretty divided on, and I feel divided on it as well. The show is noteworthy for being the show that killed off the legendary Star Wars fan favorite character Wade. There's a whole episode about the death of Wade that is pivotal viewing for anyone who wants to know more about the backstory of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Where's Wade?
Right behind you.
Obi-Wan Kenobi emerges after years of hiding. Obi-Wan becomes a target. Obi-Wan searches for allies. Obi-Wan plots a mission. Are these episode descriptions supposed to get me excited about the show?